Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trapping School podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris Pope, and in today's episode, I got a big announcement. So, at the end of this year, we are going to be adding to the family. Our family's going to be growing. My wife is pregnant, and so we're really excited about that. All of us are excited about having a new little one around. As a trapper, it's terrible timing because, I guess I've given up on that to begin with because my wife's birthday is at the end of December. My son's is early January, and this one's going to be between the two of them, if not on her birthday. So we'll see how much trapping I actually get in this year. It actually worked out pretty good when my son was born in January because we lived in Arkansas, and we had a bunch of family that came out and stayed with us. They kind of rotated out for like the first month, so I still got to get my trapping in because everybody else was around holding, messing with the baby, holding the baby, and all. So we'll see how things go. I'm gonna try to hit it hard early. Working on, still got a Texas trip, trying to plan for late November. That's all going to be kind of contingent upon what goes on, how well she's doing. But so hopefully I can get that in and hit early season hard when it comes in December, and then we'll see what the second half of the season looks like. We'll try to keep something going, and it might be good for me to get the little boy out of their hair anyway. So we'll see. But we're excited about that, and something we've prayed about and for a while now. So that's definitely answered prayers. Pumped about that. But I thought that would be a good segue into talking about kids and trapping. And I will say up front, my son, he'll turn 6 this January, so I'm still in the very early stages, kind of still getting it figured out. I know when I first got involved in trapping, and I was doing a lot with the Georgia Trappers Association, and even now there's always a couple of new faces that start to show up that their kids have gotten a little bit older, and now they're getting back. They trapped, and then they were trappers, and then had kids and all the obligations and things that come with kids, and it took them away from it. Now they're getting back in it, and it always struck me as crazy. Like, what the heck? Why did you have to stop trapping? Well, as a dad now, I'm understanding that. I'm seeing how much time and effort and money goes into what the kids do, and like I said, I haven't even gotten into much of it with the different activities and things, but all that's coming. So I'm going to give you still a fairly new father's perspective on that. So the one thing that I've noticed is that I figure the best bet is to try to get my son involved, my children involved as early as possible, and hope that they enjoy it, try to make it fun. And so that's been one of the things that I've tried to do is kind of get them involved early on. And my wife really, unknowingly at the time, she kind of really helped prep me for it, because when we first got married, she knew I hunted, and she went hunting and trapping with me. But then once we got married, and we were living together in the same house, and it wasn't just like I could go hunting whenever, or hunt when we weren't together like we had before, because we were always together. And so she actually took an interest, and she had always kind of gone with me, but she got more serious, and she got to go with me, and she even got to where she would go and sit by herself, and she killed some deer by herself, and I mean she progressed really well. But in the early stages of that, I took for granted, I think it's pretty common that as somebody that's been a kind of basically a lifelong hunter, trapper, outdoorsman, there's so many things that you take for granted that you don't realize, you don't think about. It's just kind of an automatic process because you've done it so many times that folks that are new to it, they don't have that ingrained in them. I remember one time we were deer hunting. We were sitting on the ground, and there was a couple of does come across. We were in North Florida, and so it's pine thickets, pine plantations, and then you got these sloughs, creek bottoms, hardwood heads that were, pretty narrow, but that's where, most of the animals traveled. And so we were set up in one of those in kind of a wide spot, and we had these deer come out in front of us, and for whatever reason they weren't coming all the way across, and she had a rifle sitting on a bipod in front of her, and I think the deer were close, probably like 30 yards, and I think one of them might have been looking right at us. And she turns, she starts to move, trying to get adjusted where she can get on the deer and get a shot. And of course, the deer was looking right at her, and the deer takes off and blows and bounds away. I remember, it was over the top. I was like, "What are you doing?" Just the deer was looking at us. Why are you moving? And I wasn't quite that blunt about it, but at the same time, it was definitely more than necessary. And she was like, I don't know, I was just trying to get a shot at it. And it was just, after the fact, I realized it was just one of those things that she had never been around it enough to know that deer's looking at you, you don't move, or even, even enough to know to watch the deer's head to see which way it is looking, and so that was a progress for me of kind of slowing things down and trying to make sure that I was transferring to her what I was thinking or experiencing, and kind of helping her along. And so I think in that aspect, she really helped me to kind of develop my patience in those scenarios that I think is gonna, may have been a little rough for her, but for my children, I think they'll be better off for it. So so that just, I guess my summary there is, for me, patience is one of the biggest things to getting the kids involved, and the one benefit to being in the South is I'm fortunate that most of my trap line can be run out of my pickup truck, and so that really helps, because then the whole family can come along, no matter what the weather, no matter what the temperature, and it's we can turn it really easy into a family affair. So obviously being able to drive, being able to keep everybody warm and dry, or cool in some cases, believe it or not, if you're in the South, is a big plus, and a big plus in keeping the whole family. My wife likes to go, and just because trapping, I mean, odds are if you got enough sets out, you're going to catch something throughout the day, so that's one thing that kind of keeps it exciting and interesting for everybody. I mean, that's why my wife likes to go, to see the catches, and some days it's just possums, but some days it's bobcats, and you never know. So from that aspect, it's easier to do than if you're running, a water trap line, or you're farther north and you got to deal with some worse conditions. And then, of course, the one thing that's always fun for the kids is, once we get on the property that we're trapping, they get to sit up in the, either my wife's lap or my lap and help drive or hang out the window. And, no matter if it's 60 degrees or 80 degrees or 30 degrees, hanging out the window is always fun, right? Mama's always worried about getting sick and stuff, but so that's another thing that kind of helps. And two, unlike deer hunting and different things, I mean, with trapping, you don't have to be quiet, you don't have to be still, especially if you're in the vehicle riding around. And I don't know, to me, that that's kind of more conducive to keeping kids interested in kind of the more fast-paced, always moving, is definitely a plus. And then, if you can get into, like me, I set for everything when I go on a property. So yeah, I'm definitely going to set for my canines and my bobcats, but if there's good coon spots, I'm setting those too. And of course, coons are easier to catch, and keep your numbers up with coons, and that's something that can kind of keep the kids engaged, even though, from us, catching a coon is not necessarily a highlight for kids. Any catch is exciting, so that's definitely a plus. And then, like with raccoons running DPs, they can help bait. I use marshmallows a lot. That's a big hit, because we can eat marshmallows. My son can eat marshmallows. He can throw some out the window. He can throw some around the trap, drop some down the hole. So being able to help out, he definitely gets excited about that too. And then even like, with canine sets, if it's just him and me, he gets out of the truck with me when I'm remaking a set or putting in a new set. And of course, if I'm digging in the dirt, he wants to dig in the dirt. So he's wallering on the ground and digging and throwing sticks and kicking rocks. And that's another one of the patience ones that you just got to kind of let it roll and don't worry about all that scent control and stuff that we all talk about. Just, hey, if he's having fun, if we catch a coyote, that's awesome. If we catch a raccoon, he's going to be just as happy, and he got to kick around and blow off some energy. And I even, I try to keep a spare trowel in the truck anyway. And that's, he always, if I'm digging a hole, he wants to dig a hole. So I'll hand him a trowel and say, here, and go over there and dig a hole over there. Most of the time it winds up being right by me, but at least my youngin is big on being able to help, or he's getting to where he's not so much help but do things on his own anyway. And that's one thing that he's getting to the point that kind of getting him more involved, like picking out where to put the trap, or letting him dig the hole that we're going to put the trap in, or something like that. We're getting to that point, I feel like, with him, and I think that's just going to keep him even more engaged and enjoying and having fun with it. It definitely does slow things down. You can't be high production, high numbers, especially with getting, every time you stop the truck and get out, they're going to want to get out, depending on how old he is. My son, he always wants to get out, and whether I'm going to be 2 seconds or 5 minutes, he's going to want to get out and tromps around. So, keeping them comfortable, making sure, if we need a snack break or a potty break or whatever, and even just, if you're traveling from farm to farm and got to get in and out of the car seat, that's a big, hassle right there. Just for whatever, I don't know why it seems so complicated, buckling and unbuckling car seats, but that definitely slows things down. So you got to have that in mind. And I feel like for me, it was actually the December before my son was born when I started filming and putting things online. So the filming and trying to take a different approach of doing more of kind of a teaching style versus just production, that it kind of already geared me up for slowing down, so to speak, because it definitely, when you're stopping and making a set video on how you made the set, or videoing catches, or trying to make sure that I got, video for YouTube, and I took a picture for Instagram, and my camera and all this stuff, it definitely, that slows things down. So I do feel like that was one plus for me, that I'd already, was kind of in that mindset of not being focused on production, but making sure that I kind of captured everything. And then, selfishly, one good thing about that, I feel like going forward is, now I've got just trying to think, 2 trapping seasons. I think the last 2 trapping seasons, of him going with me at least on the weekends, and that stuff I feel like, down the road is going to be very valuable for me, and hopefully for him to have, time we spent together, things we did, and, stuff that can be easily gone back and looked at. And that's one thing I've kind of taken from my dad without realizing it. My dad, man, when I was growing up, my dad always had a video camera, from the big, giant shoulder-sized cameras years ago and every time there was an upgrade in cameras, man, he did all kinds of his research and bought one. And I mean, the only bad thing is with all that is it's all on VHS and the C8 tapes or whatever, it's all on tape, so we never, gosh, there's hours and hours of videos, and we never are going to go back and watch. We don't even have a VCR, so I feel like that's one upside to the way things are now, and everything's digital, is all this video. I've got it saved on different drives, and it's saved on YouTube, or it's on YouTube. I don't want to say saved, but so it's a lot more easily accessible and I think more so in down the road than I realize now I'm going to appreciate having that stuff. And that's, I didn't think about that when I started with all the filming and stuff, but looking at it now, I do appreciate that. I'm glad I have done it. I'm glad I continue to do it. You know, one thing that I've noticed, and kind of like me taking it for granted, you know, like I talked about with, you know, different hunting skills and things that we've learned, is how intrigued with animals kids are anyway, and especially being able to see an animal up close. And I think, you know, my son is probably, I know he takes some of that for granted without realizing it, because I think I've said it on here before, you know, doing nuisance trapping jobs, and you know, one job I was catching roof rats, and I caught a couple roof rats, and the homeowner, her grandkids were up for the weekend or something. They were visiting, and you know, they came out to go for a walk around the neighborhood, and she asked if I caught anything, and I said, yeah, I caught a couple of roof rats. And she said, oh, can my grandkids come and see? And man, you'd have thought that I might as well have had a woolly mammoth or something. I mean, they were so intrigued with those roof rats, and I was sitting there thinking, man, I wished I'd have had a beaver or a coyote or something like that in the truck, because they'd have lost their minds. You know, just seeing, I guess, like I said, people taking for granted that most folks have never held an animal in their hands before. You know, that they had just, whether they had taken it or not. You know, and to be able to, especially for kids, to be able to look up close at an animal that they've only seen on TV, you know, it's pretty, definitely interesting for them. You know, this past weekend, we went camping at the beach on Cumberland Island, which I was working on. I videoed some of that, and then we wound up getting run off by rain, having a pregnant wife and raining on a remote island. Camping doesn't really mix, but so we wound up leaving a little bit early. But while we were waiting on a ferry, I took some crab traps with me, and we were crab trapping. My son was super pumped about that, and as people started to kind of accumulate, as get closer to ferry time, some smaller kids came, and my son talks to anybody, whether they want to talk to him or not, and especially kids. And those kids came, and of course they were wondering what he was doing, what we were doing, and he was super excited about it, and telling them and showing them. And man, when we pulled up a trap and it had a crab in it, they were super excited about it. And it was all for the next 45 minutes. Every 30 seconds they were asking if they could pull the trap up, and they were super excited about catching crabs. And yeah, it wouldn't have mattered if we kept a few crabs that we caught, but if we were to throw them loose, I mean, it's just, in reality, so little people get exposed to that. You know, there was a whole bunch of people sitting on the dock and watching all the little crabs on the sand, but you know, I don't know if any of those people had ever been crabbing or seen a crab up close like that before, or tried to catch a crab. You know, so even the adults that were walking by, you know, asking what we were going to do with them. You know, it's just, we don't realize. I beat this dead horse already a bunch, but we don't realize the lifestyle that we live, I guess, really how disconnected everybody else is from that, and how, I would say, how fortunate we are to be living the lifestyle that we're living, of being involved with nature and the outdoors and wildlife and animals the way they are. So that was a long-winded answer, but just getting back to, you know, kids are naturally interested with animals to begin with, so they tend to lend easily to being interested about trapping and going on the trap line, if you can keep it, gets upbeat enough for them. But one thing definitely to keep in mind, and I kind of learned the hard way, I wasn't really expecting, is you know, you got to be prepared for that, at least the first kill, and you know, maybe more after that. You know, I distinctly remember the first time my son was old enough, that it was 2 years ago. One of the coyotes that I videoed, first one of the season, and him and my wife were in the truck. The truck was probably 30 yards back from the coyote. And when I dispatched that coyote, you know, he knew something was. I mean, he was not quite 3, but I mean, he knew something happened, you know, and he knew that animal was dead. Not that he really understood what death was, but he knew that coyote wasn't in good shape, and so that took some explaining. There again, you know, being, I guess, a new dad, I just didn't really think about it. You know, I wasn't gonna have him right up there beside me when I was shooting the coyote, but you know, even still from afar, he knew what was going on, and so you know, being prepared and being able to explain, and he still, man, I don't know if it's something they talk about at school or what, but every once in a while, here lately, he'll come home and say, "Daddy, you gotta stop trapping. You're catching all the animals. You're gonna catch all the animals. We gotta stop trapping." As I explained to him, you know, we're not catching all the animals. We're just catching a few of the animals. There's gonna be a lot more out there to catch, and you know, we've trapped these places before, and we're still catching animals. We're still seeing animals. And like I said, I don't know if it's something they talk about at school, but trying to, and I guess that's one reason why there's so much opposition, because at such a young age, you know, I don't know where they get it, but the thought that, hey, this is a bad thing, killing animals is a bad thing, that's somewhere out there that they're getting a hold of at a young age. So, you know, keeping in mind and, you know, being prepared to have the discussions of why we do what we do in kids' terms, it's a lot easier to discuss with me and you why we do what we do, but something to keep in mind. That being said, then when we were at the down there crabbing at the dock, waiting for the ferry, and he was running around checking crab traps, he kept telling all the kids that we were wild trappers, and so it's mixed signals you get from him. You never know what to expect, but anyway, that kind of wraps up, you know, all the points that I wanted to hit on. You know, as I guess, like I said to start with, I'm still very early in the process. My son's still real young, and he's got a lot of years of, you know, probably being interested in other things, and so I guess, you know, we'll kind of take that how it goes and see what he develops interest in, and hopefully he continues to be interested in trapping, and we can keep bringing you the videos like we've been bringing. That's my plan. Another thing that I thought about too, talking about like keeping him involved and letting him pick out spots and things, especially as he gets older. And I remember I was intrigued with it when my dad was, you know, gutting deer, cleaning deer. You know, the skinning process and seeing, because you learn, probably 5th grade or something. I don't know when you learn about anatomy and things, but you know, I remember dissection being such a exciting sounding thing, and so, and we can dissect all kinds of things come trapping season, hunting season, and so, you know, taking the time to show them, hey, this is what an animal heart looks like. This is the heart, this is the lungs, this is the liver. One thing that I personally like to do anyway, and I think it's kind of neat, is kind of interesting, hopefully, to kids, you know, cutting open the stomach and seeing what's in there. What's this animal been eating? What's this coyote been eating? You know, I get some heckling about that sometimes from some of the folks around, but that's something I like to do. Like to see, especially, I really caught a lot of flack when I was catching alligators, and we cut the alligators because the alligator stomach is pretty nasty. Most things are pretty nasty, but alligator stomach is kind of nasty. Man, you never know what they're gonna eat. I like cutting them open and seeing. But so just there again, another way to kind of keep them intrigued and involved. You know, I had pictures of my son last year. A buddy of mine killed a couple deer, and they came over to my place to skin it, use my skinning shed and all. And my boy, he was just itching to get into it, so we gave him a butter knife to get after it. You know, when we were pulling, and he was right in amongst it. So to me, that's kind of the crux of it. As much as you can is letting them participate. And I am more than wide open for any any comments or suggestions about how you may have parented and helped your kids to stay interested in trapping and hunting and the outdoors. So be sure to shoot me a note or leave your comment, because that's definitely something that occupies a lot of my thoughts. Is, you know, I want to be sure I don't turn him off. I want him to be interested and supportive for his whole life. You know, I want him to. I hope that he kind of picks up and you know, kind of takes up the lifestyle too. So we shall see. So that wraps things up on that front. Hope that is helpful if any of y'all are new parents or fixing to be new parents. The only other thing I was going to mention is, if you're just listening to this in July of 2019, so the National Trappers Association Convention in Springfield, Missouri is this coming weekend. I think it's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I plan on being there Friday and Saturday. So if you're going, be sure to holler at me if you see me. I will, you know, if I find a place to hang out for a little while, I'll post on Instagram or Facebook if anybody's there and wants to come. And man, I'd love to see you and shake your hand and tell you thanks for watching, thanks for following along if any of you are there. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. I'm gonna see what kind of connections I can make, and see. I've never been to a nationals before, so I've been to a regional, but I'm pretty excited about seeing Tom Miranda, and hopefully making some more connections for folks to have on the podcast. So anyway, hope y'all are having a good summer, getting ready, because trapping season is going to be here before we know it, and so I'm working on slowly but surely trying to work towards getting trapping stuff ready, and otherwise we'll catch you next time.